What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and Riot put out an article today about Preseason 2021, which I found kind of interesting. It's about, as you can kind of see here, a bunch of the items they're trying to put out into the new season, which I think is actually pretty interesting. Um, I will say that I get some of the emails about the new or updated items. My goal is not to leak any of that. So even though I have some information, obviously I'm not going to share it. I also, for what it's worth, am not reading most of them because I kind of want to be surprised, just like all of you are, about what's really going down. So I'm going to do my best to dance around what I do know. And for what I don't know, I can kind of just like postulate like everyone else. And really for the vast majority of things, I actually don't know what's happening. So for the most part, I'm going to try to not just read every sentence here. I encourage you to read this article yourself if you want, but I will try to kind of give out the cliff notes as best I can and move on. So okay, stats and effects. Healing and grievous wounds. Okay, so healing has become more prevalent over the last few years. They want to address specific problems. Healing is so common that grievous wounds is basically in every game ever. And then in the games where it really matters, grievous wounds doesn't seem to be good enough. Now, I have thought for a very long time that on the healing front, we should move away from lifesteal and spell vamp and just have omni healing, right? So Death's Dance does this correctly. I think Gunblade has it now as well. Ravenous Hunter does everything but raw auto attacks for Vamp. I would just like that all to be one system. But I would really, really like personally for things like Legend Bloodline and Ravenous Hunters not exist. Because I think you should have to spend an item slot, not just gold, but also an item slot on the ability to sustain. I think if Riot wants champions to sustain a certain amount, that should be in health regen, that should be in maybe your starting items, that should be on your kit, that should be on potions being good, whatever else. But at the end of the day, I would say half of all champions must include Ravenous Hunter in their rune page. And I'm pretty sure that number is accurate, and I think that's really, really bad for the game. So yes, it does in fact lead to the point where grievous wounds actually should be in a lot more kits than it should be, or a lot more items than it should be, and that should change, so that's cool. So we're looking across runes, items, and kits to trim some healing where we think it's unnecessary. Cool. That's a good one. Taste of Blood, I think, by the way, is reasonably healthy. It's pretty gated. That's solid. Items, again, I want to see Omnivamp. I don't know if it's going to happen. I would love if it did. And then, yeah, this should reduce the necessity of grievous wounds. If there's less of it just floating around, again, I think Ravenous Hunter is the biggest problem with that one. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think it's a big deal. And then grievous wounds can feel underpowered, so this is going the way I wanted it to as well. I think in like 2013 or 14 or something, I remember having a discussion with one of the game designers at that point. Maybe they're still here, I'm not sure. So you're like, hey, what if we went the World of Warcraft way with grievous wounds and it was, 10%, but, long duration, and it was just, just a thing you added on to the buff bar. And I was like, no, that feels horrible. Like, I think the thing that League does really well is situational items. Like, if anything, I think they should buff grievous wounds, and make it a lot sharper so that it exactly does, very specific things. And is not worth doing otherwise. I will say, by the way, I think Morellonomicon having grievous wounds is a problem. Because it means you have to build flat pen against Dr. Mundo. And that feels really bad. At the same time, Dr. Mundo having to deal with grievous wounds also feels really bad. And, if it was on Leandries or Void Staff, that would feel even more bad because he's just always going to face his item every single game, and that feels pretty bad. Meanwhile, AD carries get to buy Mortal Reminder, which is appropriate, right? So, like, I feel like grievous wounds to me, there probably should be a flat pen version and a percent pen version. Or it's just simply here's raw AD or here's raw ability power and grievous wounds. In the case of Thornmail, Thornmail is an armor item that only works when you get auto-attacked. There is a case to be made for Omni-Mail or whatever, where it's builds out of health, and it's when you get damaged. Because of things like Death's Dance being as good as it is, and Gunblade being pretty solid on some champions, and Ravenous Hunter being that it exists and is very, very strong, Thornmail doesn't stop Azir. Not only are you, building 80 armor against Azir, but he doesn't auto-attack you, ever. The soldiers don't count. So it really does do some screwy things the way it is right now. I would love to see the system updated to make sense. I don't know if Omnithorns is correct. I suspect it would be pretty good. I don't know if there's Thornmail and a Magic Thornmail, and it's on, it's built at an MR, but it's any damage or something. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but there are absolutely gaps in this for sure, right? And there's a lot of really aggressive ones like Akali, who just have a lot of vamp, and Katarina the same way, right? These champions who build Gunblade first item and they get Ravenous Hunter, and they have like 35% spell lifesteal, and what do you do about that as Maokai? Absolutely nothing. You're not going to buy Executioners. You're not going to buy Merlinabicon. You just have nothing you can do. There's literally no gameplay for you as the tank. And that feels really, really bad, right? That you're not empowered to do anything. It's like, well, no. The Jhin must buy Executioners because none of the other champions on your team have reasonable item buys. And if Jin's not in the team fight, get screwed. So, yeah, huge. I don't know if it's going to be everything that I want, but I really do want to see this updated because I think it absolutely should get better. And next up is cooldown reduction is becoming ability haste. So the TLDR, because I read through this one, is instead of, right, so they're saying it here, right? So 10% CDR is actually 11% more casts, 40% CDR is 66% more casts, 50% CDR is 100% more casts, right? Clearly the scales up into the right really fast, but ability haste could be linear, 10, 20, 30% more. That's cool. I like that. I think it's really, really fun. I think it's a good idea. Also, it's going to be uncapped, but functionally it will still be capped. So this is one that I actually put numbers into. This is the only chart in this entire patch rundown, preview rundown, who knows. So this is basically, if I'm going to assume what this costs, right? So let's say Archangel Staff is ported over from League of Legends, patch 10.16 into 11.1. And it's the exact same item, except that the 20% CDR is 25 haste. 25 ability haste, right? This is the exact same stat, costs the same amount of gold. It does the exact same thing, by the way, right? So this is by the way, right? Obviously, you can't get 85% CDR in League of Legends, but this is what the functionally equal ability haste would be, right? So 5 CDR is roughly 5 ability haste. As they said, 10 CDR is 11 ability haste. 20 CDR is 25. Okay, just making sure that we're on the same page. This is like, if this is how much CDR you have, this is how much the ability haste would be. Okay, cool. And then I'm saying, look, if we're going to pretend that we're going to cost 20 CDR at 25 ability haste, so if an item gave 10 CDR, it would give, 12.5 ability haste. How much better or worse is this item in the new season? Now, I don't know if this is the conversion. Maybe it's 30. Maybe it's 40. I don't know the number. I don't know what to tell you. But this is, okay, well, obviously it's the same for whatever. If you have nothing, duh. It's the same at 2025 because we're keying off of. And then that means that wherever they peg this number at, it means that anything below it is better, anything above that is worse. But it means that, okay, getting to the first 20 CDR is cheaper, it's faster. Fiendish Codex is a better item as a first item. Maybe the runes are slightly stronger or not, who knows? As we can kind of see here, right, with smaller numbers, the differences aren't very big. And so just getting 10 CDR from a rune, right, that could just be 10 ability haste, and it's okay. Maybe that means the items are costed somewhere else, but this is kind of the conversion. The max CDR you could get in League of Legends was 45, not counting things like Cloud Drakes and Ultimate Hunter, which are multiplicative on top. But hey, bam, here you go. Here's this for you. And that means, off we go by looking at ability haste. And that would be like, oh, it would cost you about 80 ability haste to get 45 CDR. Well, if, let's say the runes are all 15 and 5, Transcendence and the scaling stat shard, which probably will just be one ability haste per level up until level 15. Maybe they actually don't care about round numbers, right? And you can have just 18 ability haste from that rune, and Transcendence is 13 ability haste, at level 10. Who knows, right? And honestly, that's okay. Like, one of the nice things about ability haste is it allows more granularity. Because with the way that cooldown reduction works in League of Legends, you really have to go in 5s and 10s. Because you can really only ever get to 40. And while this gives me 13 and that gives me 27, oh, we did it. But like, if this gives 26, get screwed, I guess. And you kind of want that 1% last CDR. Ability haste scales forever. It doesn't have really any breakpoints. Not really. There really are no breakpoints. I mean, much like attack damage ability power. Like, no. This item gives 25 AP and that one gives 30. That's okay. That's fine. That's no big deal. Cool, let's go. I love that, right? So this allows a lot more freedom. I don't think we're going to see a lot of, non-5 digits here. I mean, we don't see it with attack damage or ability power or armor. And those could just as easily be as granular, and they're not. Health is only, well, it's sometimes in 5s, but, It's almost always in 25s and 50s. And anyway, the end of the day is I like this, right? This is a cool system. Again, what it's going to end up being is Riot is going to pick a number, right? Maybe it's 20, maybe it's 25, maybe it's 30, I don't know. But they're going to pick a number where ability haste is costed at. And everything above that is going to be cheaper, and everything below that is going to be harder to get to. Because of the nature of the way cooldown protection is stacked in current day League of Legends, where it's multiplicative with each other and goes up into the right really, really fast, ability haste is generally flatter / vaguely diminishing returns, but not really. It just keeps doing the same thing, which, has a lower marginal value. So there you go. There's ability haste. Cool. Which I like. Again, I really, really like. Tenacity is now going to work on knockups, but not knockbacks, not suppression. Still doesn't work on suppression, still doesn't work on knockback. This has been something I've seen discussed a lot before. And the primary thing that people talk about it is like, hey, it might be hard to have this affect knockups because what happens with things like Vi, where she gets really, really screwed. That's like, okay, you know what, screw it. We're going to attach a suppression so that it's going to, functionally be unmitigatable. For what it's worth, by the way, Ornn also does this with Brittle. Ornn's knockups scale with Brittle, right? They scale with negative tenacity because his CC is mostly knockups. And his entire shtick is putting Brittle on people so that his CC lasts longer. And so Ornn has already done this, right? Ornn has already said, yes, my knockup scale with tenacity, but only kind of. I think only for him. Only for Brittle, maybe not for tenacity itself. I'm not sure about that one, though. Regardless, though, I like this change a lot. Now, I will say, Riot has tried to get around this in a couple different ways to mixed results that I don't think are that bad. So, for example, Nautilus Ultimate and Alistair Q are knockups with stuns on the way down. And if they were coded correctly, the stun duration starts the second the CC hits you, which means you are functionally knocked up, which means Yasuo cares and things like that. But the total CC duration, up, down, stunned, free, is fully affected by tenacity. And that felt really clever to me as long as the stun was applied at the very, very beginning. The knockup is cosmetic and in some cases gameplay enabling, but the entire CC duration is still tenacity focused. And I think that was really clever, and that's been done again in several cases, and I really, really like that. So now apparently what it's going to do is you're going to go up and then down faster, right? Essentially the hop is going to be lower because you have tenacity, which I think is fine as well. I don't have a problem with that either. And to be fair, there are plenty of CCs in the game that are just the knockup and then it's over. Yeah, so it's not going to affect displacement. So I believe the duration is not going to go, right? Their purpose is not long duration CC. The amount you get pushed back by Buster Shot or Headbutt is going to be unchanged. Again, not all these things have stuns attached. So for example, if you Tristana ult someone into a wall and they're against the wall already, they go boop, and then they move instantly. There's like no CC duration at all. If you Headbutt into a wall, they go up, and then they're free. So even similar abilities, Buster Shot and Headbutt, are practically the same spell. There's also a lot of different functionality in terms of how they actually work in the same scenario. Is that going to get cleaned up? It doesn't sound like it. Would I like it to? Yeah, probably. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but would be nice. I mean, I play Trist. I would like if my R actually stunned against walls like Alistair W did, but I mean, end of the day, yeah, I mean, it makes sense that these certainly aren't changing the distance you move. And to be fair, if you had, 80% tenacity somehow, this would have to move you to the other spot really, really fast. Otherwise, it wouldn't affect the CC duration. So ultimately, sure. I assume what's happening under the hood is they are basically saying, hey, this CC ability, its duration is going to be affected by tenacity. Hey, this one isn't. And then for things like Vi Ultimate, they're going to say, hey, it's also a suppression. And hey, by the way, not tenacity focused, right? The whole thing is going to be flattened. I think it's fine. I think it makes total sense. I'm cool with that. It makes sense, right? So okay. This sounds interesting. I like this. Again, I think it's an improvement. But it still means, Gragas Ultimate is going to have the full duration CC. Alistair Headbutt in some ways is going to have the full duration CC. Lee Sin Ult's going to have the full duration CC. Which, it's going to create its own little sets of inconsistencies. I think it's ultimately fine. At the end of the day, I think this is still an increased inconsistency. It is certainly an increase in the power of tenacity, but it also says, oh, we have a lot of CC. Let's make sure our CC is in knockups. Is like a really awkward thing to optimize around, because my Merc trends are going to be bad. So this is still an improvement to the game. I don't think it's going to end up perfect because it's going to be hard to make that happen when there's so many different kinds of crowd control in the game. But I'm still a fan of this. This thing is still cool. So next up, jungle items. They're going to have, basically like with Spell Thieves and the other Sightstone lines, it is going to be a, Hunter's Machete Talisman that converts into, I'm going to guess, Health and Adaptive Force. Now, it's possible that, like, you pick, much like with mages or tanks in the support role, you pick the Pauldrons versus the Relic Shield versus the Sickle versus Spell Thieves, and there's actually 4 jungle items, and it's the damage AD, the damage AP, the tank AD, the tank AP. I don't actually hate that, to be clear. Like, I think that's fine. For what it's worth, I actually, I could go either way with the way support items are right now. So I like the Relic Shield versus Spell Thieves dichotomy. I think those items could have been Adaptive Force. It would have lowered the number of balance levers that the design team would have had. Like, hey, if enchanters aren't running Spell Thieves and they're only running Relic Shield, we can buff Spell Thieves without buffing Senna. Like, that is useful. And you're realistically not adding that much bloat to the item shop. You're adding some, and there's something to be said about just having 2 less icons there when you're clicking the all items button and you're looking for, an amp tome and there's just 17 things that cost 400 or less gold. Like, yeah, there's something there about cleaning items out of the shop. But at the end of the day, yeah, we're probably going to see 4 jungle items, maybe 2, but I'm going to guess 4. I don't actually know, but I'm going to guess. And that, yeah, it probably evolves. Once you have killed 25 large monsters, it upgrades to the Shard of True Ice and gives you Blue Smite. And in fact, if you pick, like, I wouldn't be surprised if the fighter, like, if it's either like if the AD items or the damage focused jungle item turns into Red Smite and the tank one or the AP one turns into Blue Smite. Like, I could see that being the way they do it. They could either just say, yep, it's always Blue Smite. It's always a combination of Blue and Red Smite. You get, there's a lot of ways they could do it, right? And your imagination could run wild with this one. If there's 2 choices or 4 choices, do the smites change? Is it based on the stat you choose? Is it if you're choosing tank focus versus damage focused, AP versus AD? A lot of ways they could do it. I actually hope they don't make you make a choice. I think it's actually good if they're just like, nope, this is what you turn into. Yep, as a jungler, you get Blue Smite. Like, that's fine. Like, I really think that's fine. Like, yes, there's some people who really like Red Smite, and it's useful for them, and that's valuable, and I get that, but at the end of the day, nah, like, we're good. I think that's actually a good thing. And yeah, it'll just turn into stats over time, and you build your jungle item, and you build Sunfire Cape first item. You build your Triforce, whatever. This is cool, right? It lets you build Tiamat and not feel bad about it. Like, I think there's a lot that is positive about this. The one thing that I do want to keep in mind is, will the stats be good enough at 15,000 gold when everyone is full build? Your supports are gonna hold Shard of True Ice because it's a Sightstone. And it's like 50 some ability power and like 150 health. Like, it's not amazing. Like, it's worse stats than a Morellonomicon, but it's got a Sightstone attached, so it's fine. For a jungler, when you're level 18 full build, Warrior Enchant is a bad Duskblade, right? It's 60 AD and 10 CDR, and Duskblade is better. Yomu's is better. It gives me smite against enemy champions, but Duskblade is probably better than Blue Smite anyway, so the item is worse. I wonder how much that gets exacerbated in this, because in general, Shard of True Ice and those other items were all, generally speaking, worse than Eye of the Watchers. My recollection is that the upgraded eye stones had more stats because you spent 1,000 gold on them. And so in this version, the supports all saved the 900 gold in buying items. They got less stats as a result, but they got to build real items instead. And supports don't almost ever hit 6 items, so who cares? Like, the number of times where supports would consider selling their sight stone for stats is like 1 in 200, right? It's okay to not have that be in a healthy state because it's just not worth solving. And I really believe that. And I love consistency. I love solving edge cases, and I don't think it's worth it. Junglers more reasonably can get to full items. You know, this is 1 in every 25 games. That's enough where it's going to show up and be a pain point for junglers who are playing Master Yi and Karthus and any other farm-heavy jungler. And I wonder what it's going to look like. Are you going to get 10 CDR, 60 attack damage on an item you spent 0 gold on? I don't know. Maybe the transform is later. Maybe it, you know, this thing transforms at 10 or 15 jungle monsters killed, and it gives you 5 AD per large monster up until 70. Now, that has its own problems because it means that Master Yi is way better than, you know, Sejuani, who doesn't want to power farm late game. I don't know, but it does allow junglers, like, it gives Riot another tuning lever to say, hey, junglers, you should care about farming at level 12. Maybe that's not good for the game. I don't really know. It kind of continues to like really tell people to do a certain thing specifically. I don't know what it's going to look like in the end of the day, right? You know, again, they're still working on the details like how you get champion smite, but people like this, and yeah, I do like this. I just don't know what it's going to look like. Cool. So this is now a line break. We want items, you know, and uses. We want specific goals for each class of champions items and how they'll hit the overall system, and complement and strength and weaknesses of the class. Okay, so now we're going into items for classes overall. Okay, so Marksman get more strategic choices. There's too many must-buy items in their build. So they're trying to say, okay, let's get other really powerful things, right? Which this is kind of feel like an overall, right? So let's see. Offer contextual item choices and integrate DPS stats from more items that choices become available without giving up baseline damage, right? So this is what I've talked about a lot, and I love it. The Zeal path, right? Zeals have a lot of upgrades. You can go Hurricane, RFC, Static Shiv, and Phantom Dancer, and that feels pretty good. I like that a lot overall, right? It's, hey, I'm going to get attack speed and crit. Also, for what it's worth, Infinity Edge, Essence Reaver, and Storm Razor is a little bit as well. I want about 70 AD and crit. Do I want more AD and crit damage? Do I want CDR or now Haste and mana? Do I want a slow on hit? Like, I actually feel like Marksman do this arguably the best. And mages do it second best because all they ever care about is the stat ability power, and everything they buy gives them ability power and X. It's ability power and AP on mana. It's ability power and Zhonya's active. It's ability power and a Banshee's Veil. It's ability power and a damage burn. It's ability power and an AP amp. It's ability power and Void Staff passive, right? It's like, it works for mages because there's only ever one stat, and for Marksman, it's like, well, we're going to just bundle them together. Here's attack damage and crit, and pick one of the 3. Here's attack speed and crit, and pick one of the 4, right? It works pretty well. So I'm curious to see how much more they can do around that, how much more they can do here, because that's cool. I'm about it. Let's see what they can do with this one. That sounds fun and interesting. So they want to integrate essential DPS stats across more items. So, you know, is there a crit Guardian Angel? Is there a crit Zhonya's? Is there a crit Banshee's Veil? That, right, like, those are choices that I would be willing to make, right? Essentially, every AD carry just buys Phantom Dancer by 3rd item, and then a Death Stance 4th, unless they really, really have to go Armor Pen. But I mean, Last Whisper is efficient. I don't think it needs crit on it, but you know, I'm personally happy with the Last Whisper upgrades. I'm also pretty happy with Marksman itemization overall, so I'm curious how they can upgrade this, because that would be cool, right? Like, there are more utility options. Again, the idea of we're going to template the stat profile. These AP items all cost 3,000 gold and give you 80 ability power, and they give you Liandry's or Zhonya's or Banshees, right? Like, that is what I like. I really, 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 really like that. I would love the ultra templated. These all cost 2,500. They all give 25 AS, 25 crit, and they give unique passive. That is like my dream scenario for this. We'll see how that goes, but that is what I envision for like what I would like to see with that. And this is at least like, it seems to be looking like that to a certain degree, which sounds really good. And again, the Marksman items are pretty close to that. Let's move forward. Agency options. I also agree that yes, marksmen tend to have to rely on teammates. If you want to play Vayne or Lucian or Trist and, you know, just have the way to get away from stuff, you can play those champs. If you want to play Jinx, Jinx is different. Jinx is not a 1v1 champion. She is to be peeled for, and then she kills everything. This is cool stuff. So yes, they want to do that, but we think we can introduce some more items that allow marksman players to opt into tools. And now they've tried this before, right? Like they've had they've had blink boots and stuff. Like they've tried them out with like black market brawlers way back when. Some of them exist in Nexus Blitz right now. These like, oh yeah, here's an active item with stealth on it for 2 seconds, or an active item with a kickback, an active item with a knockback, or a blink backwards, or whatever. And I think that could be interesting. That sounds great. It's like, hey, my team has no peel. We have Xerath support and Zed in the mid lane, and our junglers Master Yi. I still picked Ashe this game because we needed crowd control. How do I not instant die to Kha'Zix every time? It's like, well, item, right? It's the idea of AD carry Banshees and AD carry Zhonya's sounds like a positive. I'm about this. This sounds pretty good. But these won't come for free. This comes, this will lower your best-in-class DPS. And this is something that Phantom Dancer and Death's Dance do a little bit, right? Death's Dance is a 3200 gold with 30 attack damage. Like, you get a pickaxe of AD. Oh, no, it's 50. Sorry, it's 50 attack damage, right? Because it's Vamp Scepter plus Caulfield's Warhammer. That's 40 in and of itself, and you get 10 for the combine. So it gives you a BF sword for 2.5 times the cost of a BF sword. Yeah, right? Like, that feels fairly reasonable. Meanwhile, Phantom Dancer gives you a dagger less than Static Shiv for a 600 hit point shield. Yeah, Phantom Dancer's OP, and that can be okay. That can be Riot saying, hey, I'm okay with the idea that Riot just has OP items that every class eventually builds, because it can work, right? So Phantom Dancer's shield scales really heavily with level, which means it's actually not very good. It's not gold efficient at level 6, because you're spending the same amount of gold on what is functionally flat health. 700 flat health is way more than 300 flat health, and thus the gold efficiency is a lot higher when you're level 15 and not level 5. So Phantom Dancer is a later game item by the virtue of the fact that the defensive stats on it scale with character level, and the defensive stat in and of itself doesn't scale. Like, health doesn't magically become better or worse, really. It's just health. Same with AD and things like that. So that kind of stuff can work really, really well. Infinity Edge is OP, and I know they want to add some choices, right? So maybe you're not doing IE first every game, or almost every game. It's basically the best first item for every marksman, to be honest. Yeah, this is cool stuff. So, hey, can we lessen your DPS for durability options? Are there more Guardian Angel type things? Can we get there? That sounds great, right? For the games where you need it. For the games where you need it, it's there. I think that's a cool thing to have as the I'm screwed, let me buy this stuff. Cool, I'm about this. More impactful with one item. That's interesting because I feel like they are already. So I guess they're just going to front load more AD on Infinity Edge or something. And what I'm curious about is, are they going to do a Luden's Echo type thing where the items are not actually mutually exclusive, but they are functionally so? Luden's Echo and Archangel's Staff and Hextech GLP all have a shared unique passive called Haste, which has 10 CDR on them, which means you don't really ever want to buy 2. But they're all very, very good first items, and so you buy one first. And in some cases, your cards where you go Roa first, and then you build Archangel second, but most champions are buying Luden's Echo first item, right? For the most part. Not all of them, but they mostly are, because Luden's Echo is OP, and it's got a very, very strong passive. It's got, 100 damage on spell hit, and it would take you 1,000 AP to double that damage, which no mage but Veigar ever hits, so it's front-loaded. This is something you could do with, if you once again removed Energize from stacking, although I, kind of like Energize stacking, it's like, oh yeah, no, you can only ever buy one Energize item, and by the way, it's always Infinity Edge, or, Static Shiv is revamped to be as good as IE, and Rapid Fire Cannon is revamped to be as good as IE, But you don't really ever want to buy IE and Repertoire Cannon because Energize doesn't stack, and that's a waste of, a lot of the gold budget. Oh, and probably, they all have 25 crit damage on them, so that doesn't stack either, so you're really not buying, more than one of them, or something, right? Like, pick your reasoning. Like, that would be one way to do it, where it's like, well, we want options in first item, but we want the first item to be better. They have to find some way to not have you stack all of those, right? I guess the other way you do it is I don't know, a death cap kind of thing where it's like, oh yeah, we multiply all of your current ability power, like we multiply all of your ability power by, what is it, 40% or something on death cap, like some really high number, which means you're going to buy death cap last. And if they can find a way to make like Infinity Edge death cap, where you actually only buy that once you have 70% crit chance, but they can make the first item better, right? Because like IE is a good first item because it has crit chance and crit damage. The stats are really, really high, and the stats are so good you can buy 2 IEs and it's correct. And there's a way to like move crit damage later on, but make the first items better, because crit damage isn't really a good first item, but IE is overtuned, so it's still there. Like, that's a way you could do it, right? Is you have an army of Stormrazor sized items that actually are a very good first item, but when do you get crit damage in? Well, you get it third because death cap, right? Like there's like a way to do that as well, to move like Infinity Edge later somehow. So like that would be an interesting way about going about this, right? Is death cap for everyone. And that's almost slightly mentioned. Like I'm reading to it more than I should. That's almost slightly mentioned in some of these other items, because I say like, hey, we like death cap. Wouldn't it be cool if tanks had one? Like Infinity Edge could be death cap for marksman, and just they find a way to say you get 1% crit damage per 1% crit chance. And that actually then probably mathematically works as the third item, right? There's a way to make that work in the right way while still making the first items feel good. Because one thing they screwed up. Well, I already said fucked. They already fucked it up with. It's too late. I already said the fuck word. One of the ways they screwed it up with the prior Marksman rework from way back when was they said, oh no, your first item is garbage. You're going to be good on 2 and 3 items. And they're like, we should do the opposite of that. You should be good on 1 item, but your big spike comes on 3. I don't know how they make that all work out in the end, but that seems to be the way they're going. And then fill in some gaps again. AD armor again, right? Where's the crit Zonias? Where's the crit Banshees? Like that's some kind of stuff that maybe could exist. They're not gonna all happen, right? It's fill in some gaps with agency options, right? So this feels very grand and this feels very small. So we'll see. Now this also does feel like this actually feels more like offensive gaps, right? Spellcaster marksman things, like what does Jhin get to buy? Well, it's really only crit stacking. Should he have other builds that are viable? Maybe we get there, right? Maybe there's a room for Spellcaster Caitlyn to exist, which by the way is basically IE Reaver Stormrazor. Okay, so let's move forward. So Mage Items getting an update here as well, right? So mages suffer from first items that don't have clear trade-off, situational purpose. They're basically predetermined by meta. Which item is the strongest? I mean, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Archangels versus Ludens versus GLP has proven to be ultimately pretty flat. You're just buying one on your mage. Like, oh, I'm playing Veigar or Ahri. I'm doing a Glacial build, so of course I'm GLP into Spooky Ghosts. And I will never ever go Archangels. I have chosen Enchant Select that I'm going to be this. And I buy the last chapter, but I'm just always going GLP. I still think this system has been reasonable. It still does feel like there's more variance. I don't have to go Archangels versus Ludens on Orianna. Like I can make that choice sometimes. I've even seen some GLP there, though I don't think it's very good. Like I think items have gotten to a decent spot. Like overall, my opinion on items, they're actually pretty good. I'm excited to see if this makes it better because better is always better. So hey, we think we can find better early game options, but meanwhile, I think mid-late are pretty good because Banshees and Zonias and Void and Morellos and whatnot. Yeah, like absolutely, totally agree. Death Cap, etc. So they're going to try to find ways to make first item more interesting. Good luck with you. Hope you can do it. Much like this, where they want to fill in some gaps for marksmen, unique effects for artillery mages. Sounds cool. Don't know how they're going to do it, but sounds fun. And then again, ability haste, and again, I like this, right? So this feels a little bit like agency options where it's like, hey, I can lose damage, but max out on some defenses somehow. It's, hey, we want to push further into ability haste. And this is what is unlocked by having ability haste be a real stat. Because ultimately, you got 20% from your Luden's Echo. you might have gotten 10 from Transcendence, which means you buy one of Zonias or Banshees, and you can no longer look for this. And I mean, every single first Mage item has 20 CDR on it. Like, yes, you might go Leandri's first item or Morello's first item or something. Like, that exists to a certain degree, sure, but yeah, it's pretty bad. And also, I want to say, like, ability haste, outside of Nashor's, all has, or rather, I should say, like, getting good ability haste for a non-mana user required it to be Nashor's Tooth. Like, you could piece together Banshee's Veil and Zonia's and get to 20 that way, and then that was kind of, and Protobelt, and then, Lichbane has 10. Like, you're just getting 10 every single time, unless you use mana or buy Nashor's. And that was kind of it. Like, Spooky Ghosts, I think, has 10. Like, these items like have 10 on them, and you like piecemeal get more, and it just kind of feels bad. And then, sorry, I'm capped already. I guess I had to run Transcendence, or these items go to waste. Like, that all just feels terrible. So I am supremely happy that Ability Haste is how they're doing this. Like, this helps a lot. Just overall, you can piece things together and feel better about them. But also now you can make a decision point and really try to push Ability Haste as a set of items, right? And the way that attack damage can build up crit, they can build up lethality, they can build up lifesteal, they can build up percent armor pen through cleaver as well. Like, there's a lot of ways to build attack damage. Ability power doesn't have really the ability haste vector. Not really. It's not really there. So I am happy to see this come in. This sounds exciting. This sounds fun. I want to see what it looks like. Super cool. Again, I'm spoiling that, down below they talk about tanks having a death cap option. Why not ability haste death cap, right? That sounds fun. All your ability haste is multiplied by 1.3 or whatever the number is. I have no idea what the number would be. That would be fair, but like, because it's uncapped, and we're going to go back to the chart, right? Like, getting to 40 CDR costs 67 ability haste. Getting to 45 CDR, which is doable with the current rune setup, costs you 82 ability haste. If you want, moderate amounts of CDR to be cost efficient at all, I mean, this costs just like absurdly too much to make it doable. So like, hey, yeah, if you can get 40% more ability haste, look, that's literally the balance. Like, that's literally death cap, right? Literally death cap allows you to make the old breakpoint happen while still allowing 20 CDR to be an acceptable build, right? When Nashor's Tooth has 25 haste on it, and Luden's Echo has 25 haste on it, and I mean to be saying the attack damage items, sorry. Yomu's and Duskblade, if those are going to be balanced as items, and they're going to have about 10 or 11 ability haste on them to, port the item over, and that gets you pretty close to mid-game situations, it's like, well, then how are you going to get to the old 45 CDR build without having a death cap? And as luck would have it, if you price at 20 is 25, well, 40% gets you there. Cool. Like, there's some easy roads there. Maybe it's not happening with preseason. Maybe it comes in a follow-up patch. Who knows? But like, this seems doable. And like, my brain is like so adhered to death cap right now that I don't know if that's even true. But like, right, it exists to a certain degree with, I mean, things like Stoneplate even do this, right? Stoneplate is kind of death cap. It literally doubles your health total. Which multiplies your health. It factors in armor and MR. It does all these things. Like death cap, does this with your ability power. Infinitive with all of your other scaling. Last Whisper kind of does this with lethality. Like there's almost already this sort of capstone idea. So who knows? Let's move forward. So AP fighters and AP assassins are going to get some new items as well. They're kind of grouping them together because they end up being a little bit similar. So tailored early builds, and this is what we talked about a little bit before. Right, AP hybrid damage durability, manaless items as well. Right, so it's like, well, you go Protobelt and you go Haunting Guys because it has the stat profile. It's like, it's not that Mord doesn't want Riley's Leandries. It's just so boring. Like, what else do you even build on Singed? Like, Protobelt, maybe, if you're spicy? And then you just go tank, right? And, like, Zodius is not really good. Banshees is okay. It does feel really flat. Now, I will say, right, if you go into pure tank, your pure AP later, that works, right? Like, these champs can just say, yeah, I'm just going to build a tank item late game because I just want to get tankier. My damage is good enough. Like, and I think in general, things like Death Cap and Void Staff, and Dead Man's Plate and Thornmail actually function very well as items. and you can just kind of bring them in. But having the first couple of items be there seems cool. So that's cool. I like this, right? That sounds nice. And I feel like there should be, again, ability haste here as well. I'm hoping, right? Because that feels like it's going to make sense. Mordecai's the kind of champion who wants ability haste. Get his Q up more often. AD fighter options. They are pretty flat here, right? It's just like, here's health into AD, and for a while that was on purpose. That was the intent of like the Juggernaut rework, and those items are still here in more or less the same form. But they want to give fighters specific defensive items to get more specifics. I know we talked a little bit about it here with Marksman, like AD armor. AD armor is certainly a possibility. The one thing I have concern about with this is, now Riot has certainly solved it with Banshee's Veil, but we had a problem for a while where every single mage simply ran the AP MR item in mid lane. Everyone rushed Abyssal Scepter in mid lane. They rushed Negatron Cloak first item. They built out a bunch of AP, and then, well, it was efficient to finish Abyssal Scepter, which then gave you 20 flat Magic Pen, so it basically gave you your Sork Shoes while making you invincible to Ahri and giving you enough ability power to wave clear, so you just always bought it first item. And so that meant that Maokai could just never kill you, because, well, it was correct for me to build this item to survive the Orianna. And they fixed it by saying, well, Banshees, it's going to be less efficient, and you're going to sit on Null Magic Mantle for a really long time, and also we're going to supercharge your early items that you can't go Banshee's Veil, because you really, really want Luden's Echo. Banshees is fine, but sitting on Null Magic's not that good. It takes a bit of item slots, only 25 MR, it's not that good. There's a reason that Banshees has 60 MR, but only builds from Null Magic, was that people wouldn't sit on Negatron Cloak. But the idea of having a good first item that builds against my lane opponent is we both build the same item, and the matchup is no longer lethal. Right? This is kind of what happens a little bit with AP versus AD mid, where one rushes Hexdrinker, one rushes Arm Guard, and it kind of pushes towards standstill, right? Because you're not getting Duskblade early, you're not getting Luden's Echo early, you're building defenses. Yeah, there's some AP on it, but the Hexdrinker more than covers for that, and the Arm Guard does a pretty good job there as well. It's like, well, it actually cools down the matchup in general. That said, it probably still feels correct that these items exist. It's just like, this is a concern I have that may well be unfounded. Just out there, right? Otherwise, core fighter items like Black Cleaver and Trinity Force bring fighter builds both the power they need and iconic play patterns, but there aren't decisions being made by fighters early in their build. They want more early options. This is happening again, right? For almost every single class, they're saying, hey, we want good early game items that feel good for fighters. And it's like, yeah, I build the Trinity Force build path. Right? I build the Phage, maybe upgrade boots. We go there. I am curious if they're trying to have these 2,000 gold starter items that you feel good about buying, like Hexdrinker size items, right? Where you buy Hexdrinker and maybe you wait and get Maw later. You buy Arm Guard, you buy Lost Chapter, and maybe you wait for a little bit. I'm not sure where they're going with this one, because to me, I don't feel like I am limited by options. I'm limited by gold. It's like, well, but I'm buying Triforce first item. I'm curious to see what this is, because I'm not... I'm also, to be fair, not much a fighter player. Fighters are probably the class I play least, so I'm not sure what I'm missing because I don't have a lot of sort of familiarity with exactly what the pain points would be. So maybe there's something really big here that I'm missing, and that's fine. But they want to sharpen the current options, introduce new ones that can compete for the crucial early slots in a fighter's build. Okay, let's see what happens. AD Assassin items, choices beyond ordering. Yeah, because basically you have the 4 lethality items, Death's Dance, Black Cleaver, and a Whisper upgrade, and maybe GA. So you have the last 4 are pretty good, but I mean they're all just best in slot, and then you gotta just choose the lethality options you want. But yeah, they don't have more situational choices, right? Now they still have their Banshees equivalent. They don't have a Zonies equivalent. They can dip towards GA. They can dip towards a couple other things. Armor Pen or Percent Pen tends to be flat across the board, right? Void Staff and Whisper upgrades are all kind of just the same items. You just buy them and everyone just has them. I wouldn't mind seeing that one branched out a little bit. Where's my Healing Reduction Void Staff? Where's my one other option? Where's my third last Whisper upgrade? Where's my third Void Staff upgrade? I wouldn't mind that overall. But okay, they want a few more lethality options with other unique passives attached. That sounds fun. And then intentional late build options. They fill out their build by pulling from other classes, Death Dance, Guardian Angel, whatever. So they want to look at what types of items they need late game, where it makes them to draw from other classes, like fighters do, versus having a specialized assassin. Okay, so they're going to look at what they want, but again, this feels like, and again, I keep mentioning Death Cap because it's in the tank one. What are you rounding out the build with? And is this, there's just 5 lethality items, but they don't want it just to be ordering. They want there to be things you pick and choose and ignore, right? Implicitly, there's something that you're not buying as a result because you're capped at 5 slots in boots, which is a good thing for League, and that shouldn't change. So I'm curious, right? Because right now, yeah, they're pulling for other classes, and it feels bad for your last item to be not made for you. I agree with that completely. So I'm curious what that's going to be. What is the assassin death cap? Because I will say, by the way, literally every mage should have death cap in their final build. You are absolutely wrong if you do not have death cap in your 6th as at least your 6th item. I want to make that very, very clear. That absolutely must be in your build. It's not close. And by the way, also Void Staff. Void Staff and death cap should actually be in every single mage's build. And so, hey, do these exist here? Well, Last Whisper for one, and then okay, what's the other one? And again, I would like 3 Last Whispers. Okay, so tank items. More options to adapt to team strategy. Tanks fill a wide variety of functions for their team. We want to make sure that the build-up support that while getting necessary defenses to be a meat shield. You need to match a split-pushing Tryndamere. How does a tank match Tryndamere? I don't know if it... I guess it's how more slowly can I lose to Tryndamere? Because if a tank beats Trynd 1v1 or matches a Trynd well 1v1, why would you ever play Tryndamere? He kind of needs to win the 1v1 to be a good champion, so I'm curious what this looks like. But yeah, hard to gauge Azir. Okay, well, Righteous Glory exists, Protect a Kog'Maw. Yeah, Knight's Vow's kind of there. Like, these things exist, but only as one item, right? Is there Knight's Vow 1, 2, and 3? Is there Knight's Vow, and on first instance of damage is also the Guardian Keystone? And we can keep stacking up. And it's like, yes, I have my one Conduit champion, and they have Knight's Vow, and they have Zeke's Convergence, and they have Guardian, and they have Mikhail's on the first CC that hits them. I'm just thinking of all the actives, because also, by the way, down the line, they're talking about wanting to remove actives from supports. And it's like, okay, well, can we make Mikhail's a passive, right? Athene's is already a passive, so hey, when I damage, I heal them as well. I have this stored up pool of health that I can just provide them. They literally gain 5% of my max health. It just takes it from my stats and gives it to them, right? Is there a 5 conduit playstyle? That actually sounds pretty fun. Now, Brahm's gonna buy those items, obviously, but 5 conduit tanks sounds interesting, right? Can I do that? Is there 5 Righteous Glory? Are there ways to continually amplify Righteous Glory? When I build the second item, it increases the boost speed by 50%. When I buy this third item, the slow range is tripled. Iceborne Gauntlet attaches, and the slow becomes a big ice field, right? Does that build path exist? Now, that feels, by the way, maybe too linear, right? Because imagine how much item bloat we need to have the same richness of Zeals, right? So okay, Marksman have a crit build path, and they pick their 3 out of 9, roughly, crit items. Okay, it's 7, I guess. But they pick the 4 out of the 7. They pick which 3 they want to ignore. And sometimes they ignore another one because they can't get 100% crit, which is mathematically fine. That's supported by math. At least it is in the current version. Maybe that changes when crit chance becomes crit damage, and everyone gets a death cap. But maybe, right? Or it's linear in the way that they're complaining about assassins, where it's I buy the 4 lethality items and boots and a Last Whisper, and I guess I'm done. That's not exciting, right? So that might be going way too much. And even then, again, you need 7 of the 4, right? If you're going to build 3 or 4 of these, you need about 7 to make these choices interesting, right? And they're trying to get, 2 more assassin items to go, roughly 2, I'm going to guess, to go towards 6-ish, which feels healthy. It's well, you need to build 6 Righteous Glory items and 6 Conduit items and 6 Anti-Tryndamere items. There's 30 tank items right there. That math doesn't line up, but you know what I'm saying, right? That feels extreme, so that's maybe not what they're doing. But hey, that would be interesting to a certain degree. Maybe it's 2, 3 conduit items. There's, 2 Righteous Glory items. I don't know, right? But that sounds like it could be kind of interesting. Either way, I like this idea, though, right? Of saying, yes, I'm going to I'm not going Righteous Glory. I'm going for the better 1v1 tank item. I'm going to go for the better engage item. That does sound interesting. I like that. That sounds fun. Okay, filling out MR items. Yes, I agree. Buying MR items feels really, really weird. You're like, okay, I'm MR stacking this game. I guess I'm going Banshee's Veil. And I'm going Adaptive Helm against Vhagar because I already have Spirit Visage and Abyssal Mask. Also, I'm not self-healing. I'm Nautilus. So I'm going Abyssal Mask, but our team is also all AD. Wow, all my items suck. Right? Like, every single one feels bad. And it's not that contrived. So I'm curious what else they can do, but it's probably adding 1 or 2 more big MR items. You know, let's see what it is. You know, I guess there's no anti-burst AP item, so it's a front-loaded shield that drops a quarter second after combat or something that takes your Vhagar Q. You know, who knows? Enhanced tank utility, and we talked about this a little bit up there, but they want takes your value by being immovable, damage soaks, while providing CC or the utility. Items showcase the utility attributes of tanks beyond baseline defenses. So, I don't know, can tanks apply brittle more? Yeah, I'm not sure how they do this. That sounds interesting. Good luck. Sounds fun. Waiting to see it. Late game capstone. This is what I've been talking about for the entire video, all 50 minutes of it so far. This is what longer than I thought it would be. Using satisfying type of items across a few other classes. That's efficient only when bought in the late game, but is satisfying as a capstone like Death Cap. So efficient, right? Like I'm going to try to read through the lines here, right? Efficient only when bought in the late game, but feels good. So it's like a Death Cap is, for what it's worth, actually reasonably efficient by itself. The math actually works out this way, but it multiplies all your other purchases. So, right, increase your total armor or increase your bonus armor and MR by 20%. Increase your bonus health by 20%, right? And there is a number where it's bad. I know people have talked about Atlas Impaler a whole lot, right? Convert your health into AD. There is a number where that is now a good item. They want to make 1 or 2 of these for tanks to be excited about in their very late game slots. I mean, I wouldn't even hate, convert 2% of max health to ability power, and your 4,000 health tank has 80 AP. That's not bad. Or 2.5%, right? So it's 100 ability power for a tank, which I know that sounds kind of funny, but honestly, that's not bad. And a mage only has 2,000 health, so that's only 50 AP, and you could just price that to a part that makes sense. Or again, your bonus armor and MR are increased by 20% or whatever. Right? You can do stat conversions, you can do stat bonuses. I mean, Death Cap is literally 40% more ability power. Yeah, sure, right? Great, that's cool. Because there isn't an item you're like excited to buy last on a tank. You're just like, well, I guess I'll get Randuin's now. Now, I will say, I would be loath to recommend that this item is actually here's % more health, armor, MR. One thing that I really like about League of Legends design is that damage scales more multiplicatively than tanks. It basically creates a sort of game flow where early game and especially mid game tanks are almost unkillable. It takes a lot of effort from the entire squad to kill them because you're on Infinity Edge Zeal on Caitlyn. Zeal's bad, but hey, this is what people are buying. You're on, Luden's Echo Oblivion Orb on LeBlanc, and it's like, yeah, you're not killing Maokai or Malphite with those builds. But when you have Death Cap and Void Staff and Luden's and Liandry's and, whatever other item you're adding, Banshees on top, it's like, oh, well, I've multiplied all my items so much, right? I've cut your MR by 40%. I've multiplied my ability power by 40%. Like, I am ready to go. I will cut through you. It means that late game, you do not just have no one dies, right? Late game, when it's 45 minutes in and everyone's full build, the fights are guaranteed to be lethal. This is important. Otherwise, you can play 4 tanks and just peel for Vayne, and you always win the game because your tanks can't die, and Vayne thankfully does % health true damage, so she always can kill. And if everyone peels Vayne, it's literally impossible to lose. Yeah, that feels bad, right? Like, that feels like a really, really a boring game to watch and a boring game to play. So I am glad that there is an eventual lethality to combat. By the time that all the builds are done, the tanks can certainly tank other tanks forever, and they can tank turrets forever, and they can tank Baron forever, but they can't tank the Mage or the Marksman. I think that is a good thing for the game. So I would be a little bit worried if whatever they have is good enough that it allows them to just sit there and ignore Azir for the entire team fight. It also means that you still need those tanks a little bit in the late game because it doesn't scale infinitely, it just scales to lethality. That they can still tank for 5 seconds, which is 5 times as long as, Fiora can tank in the front line. Fiora gets 1 shot. She's going to split push your turret down in 2 seconds, and she will kill your tank 1v1 because her items do so, but she is going to get 1 shot in the team fight because everyone else's damage has skyrocketed that high. Like, I think late game fights actually work out well in League right now. I agree there's room for improvement, but hey, this is where we're going. All right, so now we move on to Enchanters. More options for build variety. The current ecosystem is dominated by a few items that outshine other options. To this point, Enchanters are banning the same 3 items every game. And to my recollection, it's Athene's, it's Redemption, and then it's kind of pick and choose across like Mikael's, Ardent Censer, Shirelia's. Shirelia's is kind of a pretty big one. So they want to, add more items, upgrade underused ones into viable choices, and then create some new Enchanter items for new spaces. That's fun, right? I'm always happy when I have more options there. I really do feel like Enchanter items are fairly limited. For what it's worth, there didn't used to even be Enchanter items. Ardent Censer is relatively new in my mind to a certain degree. Cool to see new stuff come out. I mean, I remember when they invented shield and heal power, and they decided, like, yeah, maybe we might have ability power scale more things than just amount healed, shielding done, and damage dealt. What if it scaled attack speed buff? And there's it's been dangerous in some cases, but okay, yeah, let's see what this could do. I also want to solve active overload. More than other classes by far, Enchanters have way too many actives that they would like into a single build. We're going to take a few different approaches to try to keep builds at 1 or 2 active item sweet spot, which we think is ideal. So, again, I think of things like Luden's Echo, or more specifically, the Hextech items, right, where Hextech Gunblade, Hextech GLP, and Hextech Protobelt all share the same active cooldown, thus you only buy 1. I think that's actually a pretty elegant system. It doesn't feel like you must buy one of the 3. But you certainly aren't buying any more than one of them. That feels pretty healthy. That's a system that's been used in other games that I've gone back and forth on before, but it's getting off topic, so I'm not going to cover it. But ultimately, that system feels reasonably elegant. The fact they have a shared build path helps with that. They all build out a revolver. That helps kind of sell that sort of the idea of it. Yep, they're all building from Revolver, and Revolver's the same unique passive, and yes, you really can't buy more than one of these. You are literally kept from buying more than one pair of boots of speed. You literally can't buy another pair. Like, that works pretty well. Sterix and Phantom Dancer and Hex Drinker all share the same cooldown. Riot should be locking those out for multi-purchase because there's never a reason to buy them together, so that should get locked out, but whatever. Right, those systems feel reasonable. As I said as well, like if Mikael's was an automatic active, right, if Mikael's is Guardian, like I think Guardian is a good keystone. It is activated by the things you are already doing, and then actively shields them at a good time. And, relatively straightforward automatic mechanism triggers the effect, and it feels pretty good. Legitimately feels pretty good. I would not dislike automatic Mikael's. Athene's works really well. When I heal them, they get more healing, and it pools up by me damaging people. Like, though, that feels really, really elegant. Guardian and Athene's and Ardent Censer and, even the out of combat clicking of like Knight's Vow and Zeke's, like those all feel pretty good. I would say, honestly, for Knight's Vow, like, I wouldn't even mind a certain degree of like, if you are unbound and get into a fight, it automatically binds to the nearest allied champion and just says YOLO, but like lets you, it gives you easier rebinding. I also want to say that I like that Knight's Vow has that 2-minute cooldown lockout where it's like, well, you can't, constantly rebind in a team fight. We don't want you to micromanage that active, but, you can switch targets at some point out of combat. Like, that idea could be cleaned up a fair bit on Knight's Vow, but, like, I kind of like those ideas of, okay, I buy this item. Technically, it's an active. I got to click on someone, but then we hop off and we're good to go. That feels reasonable to me. I'm a reasonably big fan. Yeah, I would like to see ways that they do that. That sounds good. All right, more clear strengths on each item. A couple of items fall into the good at everything category where they provide defense, CDR, healing, mana regen, and active. Yeah. So Mikhail's is an obvious one. Athene's an obvious one. Absolutely big fan of cleaning up build paths. Yes, let's do it. Right. Making up a number out of thin air. At most 3 stats per item. Like, that feels good. 3 stats is enough to be like, yeah, it does these things, right? It's ability haste and mana regen because at least those things make sense together to a certain degree. And something else. It's ability power or shield and heal power or, whatever. And then sure, give me my unique, right? The unique is the 4th. That's fine. That feels reasonable to me. All right. I'm going to keep iterating. I'm going to keep talking about stuff. We are exactly 1 hour in. We did it. No TL there for this one because realistically, the entire content is the over explanation. So thanks for watching. I appreciate y'all. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.